Very well-written introduction and research. My name is Gosier. I'm a software developer, serial entrepreneur. As Caitlin mentioned, I do many different projects in the tech space across the African continent and also across the world. And I'm really excited to be here, so thanks for having me. Thanks to Frank, thanks to the State Department, and thanks to you all for sticking to the end. I know I'm standing between you and beer, so. Well, I hope there's beer. I was told there would be beer.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. So what I want to talk about today, I was going to talk about technology, but I always talk about technology. So I wanted to talk today about some of the things that Kongasa was founded on, which is entrepreneurship, the diaspora, and some of the things related to the two. And I wanted to title my talk, The Fifth Estate. The Fifth Estate, I don't know if you're familiar with WikiLeaks, but there's a movie coming out that's about Julian Assange. It's called The Fifth Estate. This talk is not about them. It's about the title. The title, The Fifth Estate, borrows from Montesquieu, French philosopher, who gave us the concept of the kind of three powers of society. You have society itself, the people, you have the church, and you have, at the time, the royals, but now for us it's the government. So you have these three powers. And then someone else introduced the idea of the fourth power, which is the press, which can hold those two in check, those aforementioned three in check. And then the fifth estate was the idea of connected individuals and people using the internet. And I'll come back to that later. So first, I want to challenge the concept of what we think of as good. Usually when we talk about good, we talk about things that feel like they should be right, like helping people, charity, human rights, better governance, all these things. And sometimes we forget that all of those things are really just enablers for what is ultimately good for nations, which is prosperity. That's what everyone who works in all these spaces is trying to help achieve. They're trying to help take developing nations and get them to the point where they're considered developed and keep the developed nations in the area of being developed and not regressing. And all of these things are ultimately for that greater good, keeping people prosperous, safe, healthy, all those things. And there's a common argument against that people working in the aid space are somehow missing the point, or they're not helping. But the reality is they are, and we can make the same mistakes with trade that we can make in the area of aid. Neither is infallible. It's a balance. We need both. But what's really important for me as an entrepreneur is thinking about where that prosperity is going to come from, regardless of whether it's coming from trade, whether it's coming from aid, whether it's coming from government. What's the ultimate goal we're trying to get to? Where is that growth coming from, and where are we going to find it? And so one way to find it is to reinvest in what's working. Another way is to invest in the future, and that often takes the form of investing in youth. They, by definition, will be the future for all of us. But it also means future opportunities, where things are heading, not necessarily where they are, where we think they're going to, where we think the opportunities are right now, but where the opportunities are going to be in 10, 20, 30 years. So when I think about where things are going to go, I can't help but think about the diaspora and how much wealth exists within the African diaspora. Now, when I talk about the African diaspora, I'm not talking necessarily about ethnicity, I'm not talking about race, I'm not talking about your nationality. I'm talking about the diaspora as it exists throughout the world, people who recognize themselves as being from Africa. And that's very important because I just pulled out a few numbers. If you look at all the people who are connected to Africa in some way within a couple of degrees of removal, you quickly see that you know, the spending power of Black Americans in the U.S. is incredible. It's $1 trillion. Nearly $1 trillion will be by 2015. The Caribbean, nearly $50 billion. When you look at how much remittances are sent to Africa annually, it's $62 billion, which is more than foreign direct investment from all nations to the continent. And that's really incredible, because if you think about what foreign investment is doing in Africa, imagine what that 62 billion or the trillion or the 50 billion could do if it was applied in different ways. And then at the top you see the global, the total global aid sector, which is separate from investment, which is 200 billion, which is impressive. But it's really impressive to me that the remittances coming from first and second generation removed Africans back to Africa is over a fourth of that. That's really impressive. So to me, the diaspora is a real treasure that Africa has that it can leverage, and that the diaspora can leverage Africa in different ways. Okay. So for me, when I think of Africa, I think of this phrase. Africa, for me, is not a place, it's a state of mind. It's a space, it's a state of mind. It's the people who are connected to the continent, both in mind, possibly in body, and just generally in goodwill towards the continent. It includes people who are trying to help Africa who may not consider themselves being from there. And I really like this graphic that you see here. This was made by a guy named Kai Kraus, and it was meant to represent how geospatially all of these different countries and regions could fit within the physical landmass of Africa. If you could take the United States, lift it out of the sky, lift it off the ground, throw it in the sky, and put it down on Africa, and put it right there, that's how it would fit in. Like, that's how incredibly big the continent is. And then you put China there. You'd have to break it and to fit it down at the bottom, but it would be down there. And then India, and it's just incredible size. But when I see this picture, what I think about is all the people from Africa who live in all these different places. And I think about all the things that they can leverage there if they chose to or if they wanted to. And to me, it's the choice of actually leveraging that makes those people African. And you can be in Africa and not care about any of that. That's fine too. But that's how I choose to define it. So that's how I define Africa's fifth estate. It's a connected diaspora. You have the church, you have the government, you have society itself, the people, citizens, and you have the press. But if there's the equivalent of a fifth estate for Africa, it is this connected diaspora. It's people who are aware and who are leveraging their power, whether it's financial, whether it's social, whether it's religious, for something for the greater good and ultimate prosperity of the continent. So this is the image that in its entirety, and I don't know. I just saw that this morning, and it just excited me. So this was a total addendum to my talk. So now I'm going to get into the rest of it. So who am I? I started a company called Africa about 5 years ago in Uganda. Kampala, Uganda. I lived there for 3 years. I moved back to the States for some of the reasons that I'm about to get into, which was ultimately being a resource that could move between two worlds. I could be in Africa and work with young entrepreneurs and students and businesses, but I could also be in the States and work with NGOs, governments, etc. And I still travel back and forth. Here's the team that I have the pleasure of working with. There's about 7 of us around the world, mostly in Uganda, one in Kenya. Kenya is having a difficult time right now, so condolences to everyone there. But our team, nonetheless, some accolades that we've won. And I mean, the things I'm going to talk about are very relevant to this, which is how do we make money? We help multinational technology companies enter the African continent. We help African technology companies and media businesses, et cetera, enter global markets, and we invest. That's really what excites me, is being able to take our opportunity and give it to someone else. So some of the projects that we've started, at the top you see, the top right, you see Hive Collab, which is a 1,500 square foot co-working space that we started in Kampala. It's for people to come use laptops, to work on projects, to get ideas, to learn from each other. Hive Collab has been around for about 2.5 years now, and it's actually outgrown its space. So if anyone knows any real estate agents in Uganda, let me know. We're trying to move it. But it's been really exciting to see that take off. At the bottom right, you see Bahia and Barbara, who are two of my colleagues who are investing in women and girls in technology. At the top left, you see us all at Demo Africa with some of the Apps for Africa winners from 2011 with the State Department. And at the bottom, you see some of the field projects that we deployed. Apps for Africa is really why I came and what I wanted to talk about. And it's in the context of that kind of preface, which is about where is the growth coming from? And for me, it's from youth and it's from technology. There's, when you look globally at the trends of where jobs are being created, where things are going, where things are headed, it's overwhelmingly headed towards a technical, very technical future, whether you like it or not. If you're a Luddite, I'm sorry, but you lost. Technology won, and it's going to be with us forever. And when you think about where job creation is, industrial jobs are losing to automation. So if it can be automated, it probably will be at some point in the future. That means as people who are in and living in Africa, agriculture, farming, manufacturing, things like that are ultimately going to be disrupted by technology at some point. And the things to invest in for the future are technical. It may not be the technologies we use now, but they're technical in nature, and people need to experience that. They need to become aware of this change. And so that's why we invest in technology. People like to talk about how apps don't really solve problems. Well, I don't really care. What I care about is the fact that the app is the language that the future speaks. And it's the language that is creating, it's the way that it represents, it's an analogy for the jobs that are coming, the growth, and the prosperity of the future. So that's why we call this Apps for Africa. So the program itself is an accelerator. We try to find individuals who are doing great things, and we try to accelerate their growth. We try to help them accomplish even greater things. To date, we've made 19 investments, some of those with partners. I'll talk about the way that works in a second. We've done that in a total of 12 African countries, and 11 of those are still active. So I call them investments because for me, it's an investment in that individual or that group of individuals' future and their future growth. The actual mechanism takes many forms. Sometimes it's a grant, sometimes it's us actually making an investment into the company. It can be many different things, but we can talk finance later if you're interested in that. The Apps for Africa team has invested thus far is only about 150,000, but we've been able to help the people who we've worked with raise an additional $90,000 per team or per company for a total of $1 million for everyone involved. And it's been incredible to see how much this has catalyzed some of these companies' growth. And it's not us doing the work, right? They're the ones starting the company. They had the idea. They gave us the privilege of taking our money and then doing great things with it, which I can talk about in front of you because I'm excited about all the teams. And you can see our partners here at the bottom. This program got started through a partnership with the United States Department of State. they was working with a guy who was interning at Africa at the time, who was friends with someone who worked, I think, interning at the State Department. And together we all kind of fumbled our way to this concept of how could we, from the State Department's perspective, they were interested in different forms of diplomacy. So, you know, how do we not do what we've been doing for the past 50 years and kind of reframe how we're approaching diplomacy? So they wanted to do something. They were used to working with governments, used to working with you know, these big amorphous organizations to change the pace of things, but I think they really wanted to try things different and work with people at the grassroots level, at the bottom, whatever you want to call it, to come up with solutions to problems that affect the continent. And it was incredibly successful. I think it was more successful than any of us thought it would be. And especially myself, I wasn't expecting this to become a huge part of what we do at Africa, but it has. And then over time, we've added more partners who haven't necessarily backed the program in the same way. The State Department has by far been our biggest sponsor, but you know, some of these others have contributed great things, particularly Indigo Trust, who's offered follow-on funding to nearly half of the After Africa initiatives that are still active. So the way the program works is we have for a while we only had one track to participate in Apps for Africa. We had challenges, which was the division, the kind of path that we created with the State Department, which was we pose a challenge every year. The first year it was civil society. Think about solutions for problems affecting civil society. The second year it was climate change. Think about solutions, technical solutions to help people prepare for climate change in their various countries. The third year, 2012, it was the business challenge. In that year, we made a big shift in how the program worked, which was rather than it being about coming up with a solution to a problem, you had to come up with a solution to a problem that was actually feasible from the beginning as a business. You had to be thinking about how this was going to be sustainable in the future. And the reason for that change was, you know, as much as we had a great time the first 2 years, when we came back the next year, many of those solutions weren't still around. Now, some of them were, and those ones we've been able to help quite a bit, and they've been able to go on and accomplish great things. But we wanted to drive home the point to the entrepreneurs and to the app developers and to the technologists and the students that participate in the program that, you know, it's great to have ideas, and it's great to try things, but we want to make sure that you're doing your best to make sure that what you try sticks around so that it can continue to help people in the future. And it's just, we just want to catalyze that type of growth rather than starting from scratch every single time. So here you see some of the people who've gone through the Apps for Africa Accelerator, just a portion that I pulled their pictures, and the companies that they work for, or that the companies that they started, I should say. And I'll talk quickly about some of their successes. So at the top right, you see Sue Kahumbu, who founded a company called iCow in Kenya. iCow was an application, very unassuming app. All it did at the beginning was it wanted farmers to be able to measure the gestation periods of their cows. So when was the best time to get a cow pregnant? That's basically what the app told the farmers. So somehow it made it through our screeners and it won the competition. It actually came first. And they've gone on to do amazing things. They were featured in Forbes magazine. iCow was named the best mobile app in Africa. I think also by Forbes magazine in a different article. They were runners-up in the African Innovation Prize. They've just had an amazing run. They got a second round of funding from Indigo Trust. And just recently, Sue Kahumbu landed a deal with Safaricom in Kenya to reach 19 million subscribers on their network, which was huge. And I think she's doing pretty well with that. Eric Muta was from 2011. She was from the 2010 class. Eric Muta was from 2011 in the top left. He just recently raised $400,000 for MiniShop, which was a solution that's trying to take those. So we're all familiar with the shops on the side of the road all across the continent, the little unassuming shops. He's trying to help them get digitized by giving them an accounting system that works in both mobile and it also works on the web and desktops. So it's kind of three-pronged approach to try to catch everyone. But very smartly, I think, he doesn't expect them to have the device. So his solution is actually to show up with everything at each shop and convince them it's in their best interest to sign up. So that's also doing really well. I think he just he's expanded past Tanzania to Uganda and Kenya. At the bottom, you see coverage of 2013 or 2012 winner, I should say, which was SliceBiz, and then again Demo Africa, which is Demo Africa is sort of like it's a big tech conference. It's a tech conference that came from Silicon Valley that recognized Africa as being a growing emerging market, and they established Demo Africa last year. The next one is actually next month. In Kenya. And last year, Eric Muta at the top presented there, as did another 2012 winner, Farmer Line. There's just been an incredible amount of success. We're really excited to see all these entrepreneurs succeed, and we're happy to help in whatever way we can. The Apps for Africa program has morphed quite a bit. We still have the challenges, and we're still going to do those. This year, we're actually doing something different. We're starting a new program that I can announce today, which is an Entrepreneur in Residence program, which is essentially taking the same philosophy behind Apps for Africa, but actually working with companies more hands-on in a more involved way, with companies that don't necessarily go through the challenge process. We find them through other means, we partner with them, and we help them establish businesses, scale them, et cetera. So that's been really exciting to see. These are a couple of the first entrepreneurs in residence. So Barbara, who I've worked with for a long time, has a new project she's working on within the area of mobile health. Ahmed, who you see there, is working on a solution for data mining and data analysis. I've worked with him on that kind of technology for a long time. And then Elliot Pence is working on something around data mining, but around the issue of compliance and how companies keep track of whether or not they're purchasing or distributing minerals that were obtained illegally or immorally in Africa. So exciting project upstream. So how do you apply? Well, you can do something amazing, and I'm pretty sure our team will find you. You can apply to one of the Apps for Africa challenges, but most importantly, just do something that is sustainable, and not just because it's about making money, but because that's how you make things last, and that's how you create jobs and create prosperity for those around you. So I'm happy to answer any questions now. And if you would like to tweet me, I'm at John Goss or at Africa. Thank you.
In the back.
Yep. You.
Hi. For communities that are not digitally or internet savvy, do not have any mobile system available to them, how do you plan on bridging that gap? Let's say if there are apps available, but if they haven't reached that that access to the internet or any mobile systems, how do you plan on bridging the gap in order to help them with the apps that are available from Africa or whichever program?
So that's a great question. investing in people who are creating, growing solutions that can actually employ people. Just because you build an app that goes on to be amazing, successful, whatever, doesn't mean you don't need someone who doesn't have technical skills. And hopefully, who once in an environment becomes more aware of what's possible with technology and then becomes technical. The ultimate problem we're trying to solve is for that person who is not technical, and how do we reach them and help them become technical? Because again, that's where the growth is. And that's, I think, part of the solution is just creating things that spread virally so that everyone becomes involved in the system.
You were first. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming. It's great to hear your insights and from your experience. The fifth estate concept is very, very compelling. The diaspora is a key component of Africa's development. It always has been, but more than ever, we can really see that impact and how it could become a reality. I wanted to just ask you to compare the relative input in terms of IT and IT development, because the State Department has been a great support from the United States. However, the AU, the African Union, also considers the diaspora as a sixth region of potential population and support. What is the support coming from that end? And how would you compare the two? Do you think that there's more expertise coming from one side, or more resources? What's really driving the IT component of investment in Africa?
So if I just want to ask the question back to make sure I understood, are you asking what the role of the African side of, are the AU, are the governments, are they participating in this investment drive? They are. I would say that there's still a disconnect between the types of things both are interested in. And I also think that there's a disconnect between how the current powers, the current people who are in power across the continent, how technically savvy they are, determines what they end up doing and how they end up spending their resources. So there's still a chasm to be crossed, but I think that all trends lead in the right direction. They are overwhelmingly investing in technology. I mean, in Kenya, they just invested in a project, I think it's called Digital City, that is, it's an impressive project for a government to put money into. It's like this big campus where they're building all these buildings and they're building all these shops and things that are meant to attract business and investors to Kenya. I think that's a trend in the right direction.
You, sir. Go ahead.
Thanks, John, for the talk. At the risk of sounding presumptuous, I'm going to ask a question which I think is on the minds of pretty much everybody here. We've talked a lot about the diaspora, and you're somebody who's moved from Philly to Uganda, and you must have met a lot of people who have done the same thing. Can you spend a minute and tell us, in your opinion, what are some of the things that somebody really needs to consider when they're thinking about leaving Canada, the US, or what have you, to move back to Africa and do something important? Africa's story is bipolar. It's either, oh, it's a great place, or it's death and doom. The reality is probably in the middle. Can you tell us, what do we need to think about, and what do we need to learn about?
So that's a good question. I mean, there's definitely challenges. I mean, I think that's the most important thing. That if you are actually thinking about leaving, if someone's thinking about leaving a corporate, cushy position to go, save their home country, I would say if you haven't been back in the past 2 or 3 years, you should go back and find out what things are like now, because we think things change slowly in Africa, they actually change very quickly. And so going back to find out what the state of things are, technology and technology opportunities are rapidly spreading throughout many countries, particularly in East Africa. There's this huge boom that I moved there. I moved to Uganda in 2008 and kind of traveled around that region quite a bit. And now when I go back, everything is just like so different. I mean, not different in the sense that things don't look the same, they feel the same, people are the same, but there's just so much more that wasn't available then, including bandwidth, which is falling rapidly in price and becoming more mobile friendly. So you can get, I could get LTE in Uganda before I could get it in the United States. That's insane to me. LTE is like 4G basically. It's not really, but kind of. So it's really quick internet. And they have it all over Uganda. It's pricey for the average person, but for people who are doing well there, it's available. So I think there is that aspect, just find out what things are like. And then the second thing is just make sure you're in it for all the right reasons. Like if you're going there to do something because you want to do it and you're going to be committed to it, then absolutely, no one should stop you. But just like any place, any project you would ever undertake, if you're just in it for a quick win, you may not find it. So.
You're there. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question about the iCal app. I understand that it won a lot of awards and it's a great app, but my question is, how did it actually affect the people that it was meant to cater to in terms of the farmers? I mean, when I think of a farmer, especially the other presentation that we had about people not having access to internet or whatnot, I think that maybe the farmers do not have the musicians of having smartphones and apps to tell them when it's good to, in
Yeah.
their house. So I'm just wondering how, did it really affect the people, or was it just considered a great app and not really affect?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I heard there. One is about smartphones. So not all the technologies that we've invested in are smartphones. Some of them aren't even really technologies, right? Like they're technical processes, but they're not really apps as you would consider it. So we use apps in the most broad sense of the word, right? An application to do something, not necessarily an iPhone app or an Android app or whatever app. So that's the first part. The second part is how did it actually impact the farmers? I would say dramatically. So in Kenya, farmers typically yield about $75 a month. That's what they earn. Sue did a study on what her users were turning over. And after the first year, the first group of people she had deployed it to had improved yields up to $300 per month. Which is incredible for a person who made $75 a month to now be making $300. Now, the challenge is connectivity. It's not internet-based. It's all SMS. iCal is very, very, very low-key. It's not a super sophisticated system, and it doesn't require a whole lot of technical systems behind it to make it work. All you need is a phone and a mobile connection, and you can download iCal. And so that deal with Safaricom is actually the best thing that could have happened for iCal, because now she doesn't have the distribution problem, and farmers don't have the distribution problem of how do you find it, how do you get it, and they can just download it off the network. So, I mean, as with all things, it remains to be seen, but I'm really impressed by what she was able to accomplish.
How many users are we talking about? So we're able to.
I'm not sure, but I know, I'm not sure. I can't say. I would have to ask her.
Yes, sir.
I know it had to be enough to get Safaricom's attention.
Hi, John. My question is about money, how to fund and money, seed fund. I'm currently working on a platform that will help diaspora to help their relatives back home, and by reducing significantly the cost. As you know, it's very, very hard when you send money to Western Union and others. And actually, I did write to you like 3 or 4 months ago. And the problem we are having right now is to find that seed fund. Even if the IP is very great, and actually we are listing as #1 over 850 venture on this for Africa, as most popular. We are #1, but we didn't make it for the next thing they're doing in September, or the demo thing, because we are asking a lot of money in terms of seeding. They're asking up to 1 million and up. And it's a way to find people who can give us the money. And we have, in terms of endorsement, we have the former Prime Minister of Canada, Jean Chrétien, who said this idea is very great, and he's ready to push and call people, but we can't find someone who can give us money to go to Africa. They can give us money to create anything in Canada, even if it's something that's stupid, but for Africa, it's very hard to get that kind of money. So where can I go to that?
So I would say, I mean, I don't know what stage you guys are at, and I'm sorry I don't remember your email.
It's okay.
But as an entrepreneur, there's only two types of leverage you can have. You can have success, bootstrap success, which means you've done something with nothing that everyone wants a part of, or you can have a solution that's so innovative that people want a part of it because they've never heard of it before. And right now, it sounds like you have a solution that could be very, very effective. It could be the best kind of solution that you could be. But the parts of it that give you leverage aren't clear to me. So I would imagine that's why you're having trouble finding the funding, because what the investor's saying, and you have to think about this as an entrepreneur, the investor's saying, well, these guys want money to go do something in Africa, but they haven't done it yet. So why should I give them money to do something they haven't done yet? I guarantee you, if you did it, like even if you only have $10 to try it, right? Like, just try it, because it's that much more compelling to see something in motion versus just, an idea that someone's asking money for. And that's why that's why you saw the shift in the program, because we recognize that too. Because we tried to fund things that were just great ideas, and a lot of times people think they're going to do things that they don't end up doing. And so we want our signal from people is, if you've done it, then we'll try to help you. But we're not going to help you get started. I don't have the resources, and I would imagine other investors don't want to take the risk. So,
well, there were more concern about Africa and the technology, because you've been in East Africa, so you know how it works.
yeah,
But most of people, they don't even believe that you can pay with your mobile phone in Africa. So
yeah.
the problem is
That's why you need to do it. You need to show them that you can do it, right?
Yeah.
People don't pay attention to M-Pesa because it's a theory. It works at scale in Kenya. It's impressive. And people still don't believe it exists, but it's already working, so it doesn't matter what they believe. And so that's why you have to kind of work around that hurdle.
Sorry, because we need that starting money. That's very, very
Well, shoot me an email, and I'm happy to give more advice.
We have some time for our last question. You there in the back?
That was a good question.
Just one question, probably I can comment on what you just said. So my question was basically, our parents invest in Africa. That wasn't not part of the slide. I did money the diaspora invest in Africa by Western Union. So since I was a kid, my parents sent money back home. So now they're asking us basically to do the same in some ways. So that's an idea to be a way for me, I think, more efficient to invest in Africa than what my parents did. So that type of ideas of giving money back to Africa in some way. So through your ideas, your projects, and what you just said, could be a way for us, the new generation, to do what our parents were doing. So what do you think about that?
I think it's great. So actually, that $62 billion is remittances. It reflects your parents sending money back to you and you sending money back to your parents. It's probably not completely accurate because no one really knows what goes on in your household, but it's an estimation of how much that occurs and how much is being spent and how much money is moving around. The risk with so, I mean, I can tell you that we're very interested in solutions that look at that. I can't say, any particular solution has the best way of approaching that problem, but I can say that it's not the first time I've heard that argument. It's not the first time I've seen someone try it, and it's not the first time that it's come up in conversation. I'll tell you the biggest risk with remittances is that everybody else is aware of that too. I mean, I found that on the World Bank page, and if you think that someone in Silicon Valley isn't like, well, I can just co-opt that market and use it to build the next whatever, they're thinking about it too. So it's not like people have forgotten about remittances. It's just that no one's actually really proved that in a way that's scaled across the continent yet. And it's probably going to happen, and hopefully we can find someone and help them do that. I should also mention that I use the term investment because it's how I think about what we're doing with all these entrepreneurs. But again, not all of the things that we do are actually taking equity in people's companies to help so that we own a portion of their business. I consider it an investment if I just give you $100 and tell you to go just do, live the happiest life you could. It's about the mindset there. And I think that it's great that your parents were investing in you when you were younger, so you could go on to do all the things you're doing now, and now you can do the same for them. So we just want to make that process easier. Hopefully someone figures it out.
So I think, John, conference will conclude this day of conferences. Thank you very much for
Thank
your...
you.